Good morning, January 5th, Tuesday morning. It was such a nice rain we had yesterday, but everything is absolutely frozen this morning. All that additional water on the ground. It's like an ice skating rink on this stage up here. Good morning, Suzanne and Daryl. Welcome. Jan Akins, Jeremy and Wendy. Good to see you all this morning. Karen Faust. Janisa, good morning. Jim and Kathy, good to see you this morning. Mike and Joe Stromberg, good morning. Good to see everybody this morning. Barbara Richardson. You know, it's interesting. There's a time of day, for those of you that are early risers, you know this, or at least if you're outside and you're an early riser, that just before sunrise, it's a certain temperature, and right as the sun, twilight is starting to come up, the temperatures just drop by several degrees, and that's just true, and that's what it's happening right now. I mean, not an hour ago, nothing was frozen, but now everything's frozen because the temperature just drops when the sun is starting. There's that transition. A little wind comes up. It's not present now, but that's generally true. So I'm seeing a bunch of names. Good morning to everybody who's coming in. Sally Crocker, I see you. I saw a bunch of other names go by. Shelly Hartzicker, good morning to you and Dave. Welcome. This morning, this whole entire week, I'm talking about the steps of developing a rule of life, living intentionally. The rule of life is simply putting structure and intention to all of the components of your life to make Jesus the center of everything. Michael and Kim, good morning to you. And I've talked about 4 different categories. We've already talked about relational areas of my life, and I'm just giving you examples of my rule of life. Yesterday I talked about the spiritual components of nurturing the spiritual components to cultivate abiding in Jesus and living a spirit-filled life, to be central to what I'm doing, loving the Lord, my Lord God, with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then relationally loving others as myself. And I wanted to put a pause before I went to the next category, because I feel like I'm just giving out so much information. It's hard to process it. Sometimes it gets to the point where it's not very helpful. So I wanted to kind of slow down my pace a little bit. And I want to talk about the importance of resistance and failure. So it's easy, particularly like with devotionals, with these kinds of topics where you're given a lot of ideas. I've read a ton of books like this too, where you're given all these ideas about how to bolster your spiritual life, to become more whole as a healthy person living out in healthy relationships, and to grow in the faith. And there's a heavy emphasis on different practices, which are all important, and they're all tools to help us grow. And I felt like yesterday I talked about a bunch of practices to deepen our spiritual journey. And I wanted to stop and talk about the reality that there is a journey in the following of those practices that includes resistance and failure as a part of the journey. And it's important for us to know this. Jesus said in his ministry several times, count the cost. Understand before, a builder builds something, he's going to see if he has the resources to complete the project. And so here's a part of the cost of pursuing a rule of life, creating a bunch of, it's not really just a bunch of goals, it's aligning your life to a standard that you are intentionally pursuing. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago with regard to intention. You create a target that you can aim at so that you can measure whether you're on track or not, if you're missing the target or you're hitting the target. And when you create these measurements or these standards that you're aligning your life by, it's important for us to understand that there is going to be, first of all, resistance to pursuing that standard. And that's resistance comes both internally and externally. So externally, say we're talking about developing spiritual different disciplines like I'm going to read my Bible, I'm going to pray more, I'm going to do some of the specific things we talked about yesterday. There's going to be an external resistance to that. You're going to find that you don't have a lot of time. I talked about dedicating time throughout my day to stop and pray and so on. Maybe your day is really full. Maybe it's, I'm going to dedicate my mornings to an hour to pursue God in my devotional life. Well, maybe you went to bed late the night before and getting up early is really difficult. Or whatever time you set aside to pursue some of these spiritual disciplines to grow in your faith, time will always feel against you. There will always be things that are important, that are urgent, that make it difficult for you to do these things. So that's be an example of an external resistance. And then there's internal resistance that sometimes we just feel indifferent. Like, I don't want to read my Bible today. And believe me, I experience that on a regular basis. I get up very, regularly, early, with the intention of reading, journaling, and praying. That's part of my morning routine. But there's lots of mornings that I have to overcome internal resistance to get out there. I'm drinking coffee, and, I'd rather just be on my phone. I'd rather just sit here and stare off into space. I have trouble making the decision sometimes to open my Bible and engage. And so there's internal resistance of what I would just classify as indifference. And there's internal resistance in that, there's a fear, maybe. Fear of, I can't do this. Maybe there's a internal resistance of, after a failure or something, you feel like, I'm not worthy, I'm just going to give up, I can't sustain this, whatever it is. There's external resistance and internal resistance, and that resistance can often lead to failure. I want you to know, and this is an important part of the journey, and everybody experiences this. So as I describe my rule of life to you and the different practices that help me align my life to an intentional way of living, to grow in all areas of my life and to put Jesus at the center of all things, I have to tell you, I fail all the time. I talked yesterday, was it yesterday or day before? Anyway, about marriage being my priority. I talked about being in my 20s and how ministry was first, and my devotion to God and ministry, and Martha, if you're going to spend time with me, you got to come down to the church building because that's where I'm at. That I'm saying was a failure in understanding the priorities of life. But then there's just failures of you have a really healthy, clear goal of what you want to be accomplishing, being very intentional, and with those internal and external resistance, all of a sudden you just don't follow through. You actually don't do it. That's very much a part of things. I talked about yesterday's Sabbath, how incorporating a day of just rest and reflection on God has been really a helpful, fruitful experience for me. But I have not largely practiced that for months. Coming off my sabbatical, I was all charged up about it. I did it for several months, but then 2020 hit and I got distracted by everything that was happening and working extra hours initially. And I thought, well, I'll put it aside for now. I'll pick it back up. Well, I never did. Not that I didn't have all my normal routines and so on of spiritual growth. And I did grow tremendously during this last year. I'm so grateful for that. But Sabbath keeping wasn't a part of my life. And so there's failure. I'm just telling you, there's failure involved in trying to pull these things off, to live intentionally. There's going to be resistance, and it's going to result in failure. And so these are necessary. We have to know this ahead of time, because it leads us. This is God puts these things, or allows these things in our life, so that we can learn other vital character traits. And there's two of them that I'm going to bring out this morning. One is resilience. We experience resistance to doing what we want to do. We fail at doing what we want to do. And that leads us to, we must be resilient. Resiliency is simply being able to realign ourselves to the goal after a setback. And resiliency to anything is like if some sphere has a dent in it because of a setback, an obstacle, or whatever, it's the ability to be able to pop that dent back out and reconform to the shape that it needs to be. So we're going to have setbacks, we're going to have failures, we're going to have obstacles in our life. And resiliency is something we learn after failure, after we've reached a setback, after we've come to the end of our limitations. And we must be able to pick ourselves back up and continue in the path. That's resiliency. And resiliency gives way to the second characteristic I want to talk about that's so important to us, is perseverance. Another word for this is endurance. Perseverance is the determination to continue on a path, a particular path, a predetermined way that despite setbacks and obstacles. So you have resistance, you set a goal, you've set a standard for yourself. You have resistance to that standard. You fail. Resiliency means I'm going to pick myself back up. Perseverance means I'm going to continue in the path. Resiliency and perseverance are vital to our Christian maturity and faith. So I put these out there because as we look at the ways that we want to deepen our faith and the practices that are called disciplines for a reason, because there's resistance to them. It doesn't always feel good or produce the results immediately that we would want. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes energy, it takes resilience and perseverance, because there's resistance and failure all along the way. So don't give up when you create these standards. Don't give up because you have failed along the way. These are also God's tools of growing us to develop resilience and perseverance. And you could probably think of the many biblical verses that support this idea. So I'm praying for you today, and I pray that you are encouraged to stay the course. Whatever setbacks or obstacles you have experienced, that you pick yourselves back up and you move forward in our journey of faith to make our life, our marriages, our relationships with people, our parenting, our careers, our whatever it is that we're trying to align with the purposes of God, that we don't allow setbacks and obstacles to cause us to give up, that we continue to align ourselves with these important things. So God bless you today, and we'll see you again and tomorrow morning.